Something was stalking the railroad workers in the Serengeti of Kenya. It was one of the worst animal attacks in history. But before we go there, make sure you subscribe, because we bring interesting stories that perplex the mind. Mahina was a construction foreman working in Kenya on the wild savannah. He was asleep in his tent with 3 other men. In the dead of the night, he would be ripped from that tent and dragged over 50 yards away by a large male lion, who quite literally would eat him alive. It was 1898, and Mahina was part of a large group of men recruited from local Kenyan tribes to help build the Uganda-Mombasa Railroad, a British-led project which helped expand their influence in the East African region, specifically what is now Tsavo National Park. It was a particularly challenging project, challenging terrain, and the fact that the local African sentiment at the time, they did not want to tear up and disrupt this holy land to build these Western modern railroads. They wanted it left untouched and pristine. So it was very hard for them to recruit local African men to work. They recruited as many locals as possible, but actually ended up getting most of their manpower from thousands of miles away by importing poor Indian workers. They would give them a contract with a promise to pay later. But these Indians were not accustomed to the dangers this East African bush possessed, like dangerous animals. It was backbreaking work, and the East African heat would end up claiming many lives to heat exhaustion. A lot of the bodies, they would end up just leaving on the roadside while the construction project continued on. But eventually they hit a river and work stopped. They would be stuck in that one place for what would turn out to be many, many months. They needed someone with more expertise to complete this bridge over the river. So they ended up hiring John Henry Patterson, a British military engineer and avid big game hunter. Upon arrival, Patterson learns from the camp's doctor that they've been having severe lion attacks, the worst that anyone has ever seen. The Indian workers, especially thousands of miles away from home, they were absolutely petrified and they didn't want to work in these conditions. So priority number 1 was to deal with these lions. Patterson, the determined military man that he was, decides to camp out in the trees and stake out the lions for a couple of nights. And he's actually able to kill one of the lions with 1 rifle shot, a feat that ends up earning them massive respect inside of the camp. So work is able to continue on the bridge. Only a few weeks after Patterson kills the lion, Mahina, the construction foreman, is dragged from his tent and killed by the lion. So Patterson, with his one-shot reputation, decides to go on another nighttime lion hunt. But he doesn't actually end up finding anything. And come sunrise, they find out that the lion's taken another victim on the other side of this huge camp. To give perspective, an American male mountain lion is around 140 pounds. A female African lion is around 300, with the males being up to 450 pounds. Your head could fit in its mouth, and the size of its paws could crush ribs. They decided to use an age-old African defensive bush tactic. They took branches from the acacia tree with 3-inch long thorns and built a giant thorn fence line around the entire camp, and then also burned fires at night to help keep the lions out. But they must not have known that some lions can jump as high as 12 feet. Several days later, one of the lions jumps the fence barrier and kills yet another worker. No one had ever seen anything like this. It was unheard of. 2 separate lions paired up hunting humans, just not something that happens. It's usually a solitary type of event. So with this victim count mounting up inside of this camp, the legend of these 2 man-eating Tsavo lions keeps growing and growing and growing, spreading terror across the entire camp. The huge death toll and these workers not wanting to go to work, Patterson has a huge problem on his hands. So he tries hiring local Maasai tribesmen to hunt the lions, who have a fierce reputation. But the Maasai elders, they refuse to help, because they don't think these are ordinary lions. They think that they're 2 evil spirits enacting revenge on the workers for destroying and disrupting this natural, pristine landscape. They nicknamed these 2 man-eating lions the Ghost in the Darkness. Work on the railroad is backbreaking, and so is the African heat. Diseases like malaria are running rampant through the camp, and accidents are happening. They house these sick and injured people in a makeshift hospital. But the smell of blood from these people is attracting the lions in like a dinner bell. Patterson decides he's going to try and use this. He moves the hospital to a new location and uses the old hospital building as a sort of lion trap. They fortify the building and then arm themselves inside of it. They spread animal meat and blood all around the building to help attract the lions in. But as you may have guessed, the plan doesn't end up working. So they have to revert back to another traditional tactic. They tie a baboon to the ground and then camp out in the surrounding trees. Lions love to hunt baboons, but the baboon is particularly useful because when it's used as bait, it's really good at sensing when a lion is nearby and alerting with its high-pitched screaming. So Patterson, using this tactic, after a couple of nights, they end up being successful and they're able to shoot and kill one of these lions. But the carnage doesn't end there. The remaining lion continues to hunt and kill people wandering just outside of camp, and even venturing inside to attack. So what they end up doing is they torch all of the tall brush surrounding the camp, so no lion has anything to hide in. And eventually, they're able to kill this last remaining man-eating lion. In 1907, Patterson's story was told in a popular book called The Man-Eaters of Tsavo, and later a movie was made called The Ghost in the Darkness, featuring Val Kilmer and Michael Douglas. Originally, it was thought that these two maneless lions were driven to human prey from desperation and hunger. But modern studies think that they got a taste for humans by scavenging the dead bodies of workers that were just left along on the roadside. Eventually, they started hunting live humans, and over the course of a few months, they grew braver and braver, venturing inside of the camps. Studying the dead lions, they found abscesses on their teeth, which they assumed would make it harder for them to catch their traditional prey of wildebeest, zebra, and gazelle. So they sought easier game. Another theory suggests that Patterson, an avid big game hunter, embellished the story to attract Western white hunters and settlers to the region. Killing a lion, aka the king of the jungle, was a metaphor for conquering Africa. Records indicate that these legendary Tsavo man-eating lions killed over 135 people in the region, giving birth to the legend of the Ghost and the Darkness.